Welcome to Victorian England, where cocaine wasn't a scandal, it was practically a food group. It lived in your tea, your toothpaste, your parenting strategies, and your pores. Doctors handed it out like mints, and everyone's left eyebrow twitched in agreement. This is the story of how an entire nation got absolutely blitzed on cocaine, while maintaining perfect posture and judging each other's curtains. If you enjoy drifting off to sleep with tales of history's most elegant addictions, hit that like button and subscribe for more cozy chaos. This episode is part of our Victorian series, a charming collection of bedtime stories exploring the most bizarre and beautiful sides of 19th century life. Tell us in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is, because there's something oddly comforting about knowing we're all drifting off to stories of powdered remedies and polite delusion. Now dim the lights, get cozy, and let yourself drift off as we step into a world where being calm, cheerful, and cocaine-enhanced was simply good manners. You just wanted to relax, that was it. You had a long day, you survived a particularly grueling piano lesson, the neighbour's horse sneezed on your crinoline, and your husband spent the afternoon dramatically coughing near the window, hoping you'd ask about his nerves. So when the chemist offered you a new temperance tonic, a chilled glass of something called Coca-Cola, you took it. You needed this. He promised it was non-alcoholic, invigorating, soothing, excellent for the digestion, and endorsed by the Pope Thomas Edison and someone's aunt who hasn't slept since April. The first sip is lovely, sweet, syrupy, a little citrus, a little spice. The second sip hits differently. By the third sip, your entire skeleton is vibrating, your jaw is grinding like a coffee mill, and you've developed a passionate interest in both the Crimean War and brass doorknobs. Your shoulders are doing their own thing. You feel the sudden, inexplicable urge to alphabetize the carpet. You've never felt more alive, or more suspicious of wallpaper. You stare at the chemist. What's in this? He grins. Oh, it's quite safe. Just coca leaves and cola nut. You blink. Coca? As in cocaine? Very trace amounts, he says reassuringly. Almost none at all. Just enough to get the blood up, clear the sinuses, invigorate the organs, awaken the spiritual body and make you forget your own name during dinner. You nod slowly. You're now 3 sips past the recommended dose and 2 minutes away from founding a new religion. Coca-Cola, as it turns out, was invented by a wounded Confederate soldier with a morphine habit, because of course it was. Dr. John Pemberton, pharmacist and sword recipient, had what polite Victorians might call a chemical inconvenience. So naturally he looked for a cure by replacing his morphine addiction with a cocaine-based fizzy beverage. His early creation, Pemberton's French wine coca, was a knockoff of the wildly popular French drink Vin Mariani, a heady mix of red wine and Peruvian coca leaves. It was popular with everyone from Jules Verne to Pope Leo XIII, who was so fond of it he gave it a gold medal and apparently kept a hip flask on him for emergencies. Emergencies, in this case, meaning boredom, prayer fatigue, or Tuesday. But in 1886, Atlanta passed temperance laws banning alcohol. So Pemberton, ever the entrepreneur, removed the wine, added sugar syrup, carbonated the whole thing, and created a temperance drink that still included cocaine. This was like removing the gunpowder from a cannon and replacing it with fireworks. You still had a bang, but now it was fizzy and came with a head rush. Pemberton named it Coca-Cola and marketed it as a valuable brain tonic and nerve restorative. According to its early ads, it cured fatigue, headaches, bad moods, indigestion, shyness, possibly ghosts. Its motto might as well have been, why feel your feelings when you can drink them into euphoric submission? It was served at pharmacies and soda counters across the country. Patrons would walk in weary and walk out fully prepared to repaint their roofs, translate the Iliad, and finally confront their ungrateful cousin Bernard. Thomas Edison drank it. Sherlock Holmes probably drank it. People in corsets drank it and immediately regretted how little lung room they had for all this adrenaline. Each serving contained a small but meaningful dose of cocaine. It wasn't until 1903 that the cocaine content was removed, publicly, though it wasn't until 1929 that it was fully phased out behind the scenes. To this day, Coca-Cola still uses coca leaves, just decocainized ones, processed in a DEA-approved facility in New Jersey, which is absolutely the least surprising sentence you've ever heard about New Jersey, but none of that matters right now. You're 3 glasses deep conducting an imaginary orchestra in the parlour, and drafting blueprints for a steam-powered sewing machine that also critiques poetry. You've accidentally cured your own sciatica by running in a circle and screaming "I'm invincible" into the gaslights. And just as you're about to settle down, the chemist returns with something new. A bottle of red wine with a golden label and a recommendation from the Pope himself. You smile. What could possibly go wrong with wine and cocaine? It's just wine. That's what you tell yourself as the chemist gently uncorks the bottle and pours you a generous Victorian glass, which is to say, roughly the size of a modern cereal bowl. The label reads Vin Mariani, and the gold foil insists it is endorsed by the Pope, the President of France, and at least one famous magician. You take a sip. It's smooth, warm, and oddly spicy, like drinking a Bordeaux aged in a monastery, filtered through ambition. By the second sip, you've forgotten you ever had problems, or blood pressure. By the third, you've recited Shakespeare backward, reorganised the chemist's shelves by emotional relevance, and challenged the town vicar to a push-up contest. You now believe in your own greatness. You're convinced you can fly, or at the very least levitate slightly when concentrating near wallpaper. You say aloud, "I feel wonderful." The chemist nods solemnly. "Yes," he says, "that's the cocaine." Vin Mariani was the Red Bull of the Victorian age, if Red Bull also came with a rosary and a medical excuse. Invented in 1863 by Angelo Mariani, a Parisian chemist who looked at wine and thought, this could be much more unstable. The drink combined fine red Bordeaux with Peruvian coca leaves, the natural source of cocaine. The wine extracted the alkaloids straight from the leaves using ethanol, creating a concoction that offered the sophistication of a dinner party with the emotional trajectory of a rocket launch. Each glass contained about 21 milligrams of cocaine. The recommended dosage, 3 glasses per day, or, as modern doctors would phrase it, absolutely not. This wasn't some underground elixir, it was the drink. Vin Mariani was endorsed by Jules Verne, Thomas Edison, Queen Victoria's medical staff, Pope Leo XIII, who was such a fan he carried it in a hip flask and awarded Mariani a Vatican gold medal, which incidentally is still more official than most modern energy drink endorsements. Ad campaigns described it as a tonic for mind and body, a wine for the weary, a spiritual uplifter for the overtaxed soul, and apparently a legally permissible way to feel like a Victorian god. Even US Presidents Grant and McKinley were known to enjoy it. Politicians loved it, artists swore by it, surgeons recommended it, everyone else just drank it until the clock stopped talking. One 1880s newspaper advertisement read, "A glass before breakfast bestows cheer. A glass at lunch invigorates the mind. A glass before bed soothes the soul and occasionally polishes the floor with your body." Side effects included joy, productivity, mild delusions of grandeur, unexpected fluency in Latin, and the firm belief that your liver had evolved into a superior organ. It was also marketed for women's delicate constitutions, children with fatigue, and anyone experiencing what doctors referred to as exhaustion of the moral faculties, which was Victorian for tired of other people's nonsense. Back in the chemist's shop, you're pouring your second glass of Vin Mariani when the candlelight begins to shimmer. Or maybe the walls are applauding. You're not entirely sure. Your hat feels inspiring. You've started humming hymns to a spider in the corner. You're overwhelmed with ideas, mostly impractical, but magnificent. And just as you begin sketching a hot air balloon shaped like Queen Victoria's profile, the chemist taps the counter. "I've got something new," he says. You turn eyes wide. "More wine?" He leans in. "Better. It's in tablet form." You gasp and he nods solemnly. used by explorers, Arctic ones. You obviously take the entire bottle. You're not planning an expedition. Let's be clear about that. You're just going to the market. You need a cucumber, some shoe polish, and possibly revenge. But the chemist, your trusted, twitchy chemist, insists you'll need something special for the journey. Try these, he says, placing a glass bottle on the counter. Inside, several chalky white pills with an embossed lightning bolt and the label, Forced March. For endurance, he whispers. Very popular with the Arctic types. You do not question this. You take one tablet. Nothing happens. You take another. Suddenly you are no longer a tired Victorian with cabbage breath. You are the embodiment of velocity. You are a creature of snow and triumph. You have never climbed anything, but you are now certain you could summit a cathedral and possibly baptize the weather. You run out of the shop without paying. 10 minutes later, you've made it to the market, reorganized the produce section by continent, and attempted to rally a team of strangers to join your expedition to the South Pole. You do not need cucumbers anymore. You need crampons and glory. In reality, you weren't the only one overconfidently pacing in wool trousers. Cocaine tablets, often branded as Forced March pills, were genuinely used by Victorian-era explorers, including Ernest Shackleton, Captain Scott, and Dr. Frederick Cook, who swore by them during polar expeditions. Because nothing says responsible logistics like trekking across Antarctica with a pocket full of narcotics and blind optimism. These tablets were marketed as stimulant of heroic vigour, aids in long marches, great fatigue, and exposure to wind. Highly recommended for soldiers, cyclists, and extremely determined lunatics. The idea was simple. If you had to walk 40 miles in a snowstorm, and your other option was dying in a frozen tent beside a man named Nigel, then cocaine seemed like a reasonable compromise. They were sold at chemists, included in military kits, and praised in exploration memoirs. One account described them as delivering warmth, clarity, and forward motion, which is poetic considering they were just pressed cocaine and wishful thinking. The Forced March brand in particular promised no crash, no fatigue, no hunger, which sounds suspiciously like a lie crafted during a minor heart palpitation. Some explorers credited these pills with keeping them alive. Others failed to return and were found grinning, shirtless, and halfway through inventing the metric system in the snow. Victorian newspapers didn't report many objections to these tablets, mostly because the people taking them had the energy to build a snow fort before the ink dried. Back in the market, you've now climbed a display of turnips and declared yourself governor of produce. You're sweating heavily. The cucumbers have lost all meaning. You've sketched a rudimentary flag using celery and a meat receipt. And just as you prepare to march home in triumph, you remember, oh yes, you forgot to brush your teeth this morning. Luckily your chemist mentioned something earlier, something about coca leaves, morning rituals, and tongue fur. You pop one last tablet. You've got hygiene to attend to. You wake up on the floor. This is not unusual. You suspect you got there by energetic means. Your boots are on the bookshelf. Your hair smells like celery. There's a vague memory of shouting South Pole or bust at the vicar's cat. You sit up slowly. Your pulse is still performing a drum solo in your ears, and your mouth feels like you've been licking the inside of a coal bin. Your tongue is dry, furry, and, upon close inspection in a tarnished mirror, possibly developing its own opinions. This will not do. You need something cleansing, something herbal, something Victorian and vaguely French. Luckily, the chemist left you with a small glass vial labelled Morning Reviver for furred tongue, flatulence, and indecision. Perfect. You pour it onto your toothbrush, swirl it across your teeth, your gums, your soul. The effect is immediate. You can now taste colour. Your tongue feels like it's been reborn as a slightly angry lizard. You scream, not out of pain, but because the clock just ticked and startled you. You leap from the basin, slap a towel rack, and declare the bathroom secure. You're now ready to face the day, and possibly challenge it to a duel. Let's talk about the cocaine-powered Victorian morning routine, because yes, there was one. In the 1870s to 1890s, several European physicians, including the Italian anthropologist and occasional lunatic Dr. Paolo Mantegazza, began promoting coca leaf products as the ultimate solution to morning woes. In his writings, Mantegazza claimed that coca could cure furred tongue, a condition caused by dehydration or bad dreams, alleviate flatulence, whiten the teeth, improve one's general temperament, particularly when surrounded by annoying people. He recommended rinsing the mouth with coca infusions in the morning, a practice that gained popularity in hygiene-conscious Victorian households, especially among people who didn't question why their toothpaste made them want to organise the wallpaper. Articles in medical journals praised the astringent and awakening effects of cocaine on the mucous membranes. Dentists began offering cocaine pastes, powders, and even chewing gum like lozenges for oral freshness and cheerful nerve stimulation. And the public followed with the same energy one might bring to an after-dinner séance. One advertisement in an 1889 dental catalogue promised cocaine mouthwash, restores vigour to the teeth, clears the tongue, encourages sociability, and prepares the gentle person for meaningful conversation. In reality, it turned your tongue into a slab of euphoric rubber and made you unusually passionate about cutlery. Housewives used it to start the day. Gentlemen used it before meetings. Teenagers probably used it before asking the butler existential questions about bread. And because the effects were both cleansing and energizing, it wasn't long before people applied the logic elsewhere. If cocaine was good for the tongue, why not the eyes? Why not the eyelids? Why not the eyelashes? Back in the bathroom, you've successfully polished your teeth, calmed the towel rack, and attempted to reason with your own reflection. You're dazzling, enlightened. Your tongue feels like marble, but something is still off. You peer closer in the mirror. Ah, your eyelashes. Too short, too humble, too unworthy of your cocaine-kissed magnificence. You snap your fingers. You need a needle. And more cocaine. You're going to upgrade your face. You are stunning. Your teeth gleam with the brilliance of industrial polish. Your tongue is a sleek, glistening muscle of articulation. You've stared down your reflection, the towel rack, and a passing dust mote, and you have triumphed. But something's missing. You lean closer to the mirror. Your eyes are radiant. Your skin is pulsing with unearned confidence. But your eyelashes, pathetic, short, wholesome, the kind of lashes found on librarians and people who eat sensibly. You want something fierce. You want lashes that flirt, that slap, that cause minor air disturbances when you blink. You remember what the chemist said in that offhand way of his, like he wasn't sure if he was joking or legally liable. Numb the eyelids with a cocaine tincture and stitch in new lashes. Very fashionable, very French, very invigorating. You stare at the sewing kit, then at the bottle of cocaine eye drops, then at your reflection. Moments later, your face is a battlefield. Your eyes are numb. Your hands are steady, thanks cocaine. You're gripping a needle and a lock of human hair, possibly yours, possibly borrowed, and you're ready. You blink once, and then you get to work. It sounds like a bad idea because it is, but in the 1890s, it was also very much real. Victorian beauty trends were, as the youth say, unhinged. Women routinely poisoned themselves with lead-based face powder, wore arsenic wafers for a glow, and chased waists so small they could be used to cut cheese. So when someone suggested numbing the eyelid with cocaine and stitching in artificial lashes with a needle, the public response wasn't, "Oh dear God, why?" It was, "Is there a discount for both eyes?" The procedure was first documented in beauty columns and salon gossip as a method of enhancing feminine charm without paint or powder, which is a poetic way of saying home surgery on your eyelids while lightly hallucinating. The method involved applying a topical cocaine solution to the upper eyelid to numb the area, taking a needle threaded with long human hairs, or horsehair for the adventurous, sewing the lashes directly into the edge of the eyelid, sitting very still while your eyeball politely begged for mercy. It was not done in medical offices. It was done in salons, by women with names like Madame Claudine or Miss Evangeline, whose credentials included having opinions about hats. There are no records of how many people blinked halfway through and lost depth perception, but based on everything else Victorians did in the name of beauty, the number is probably too many. Advertisements promised a lively, flirtatious eye and ravishing feminine allure. They failed to mention the bleeding, scarring, and general risk of looking like you lost a fencing match to a raccoon. But for those brave souls who completed the process, they emerged with longer lashes, glassy stares, and the unmistakable energy of a person who's seen the universe from the inside of a needle. Back in the mirror, you admire your work. Your eyelids are tender. Your lashes are present. One leans east. The other salutes the Queen. But you did it. You sewed hair into your own face using drugs and determination. You are a modern masterpiece. You're also late for tea. You grab your parasol, your powdered gloves, and one last dab of nose refresher from a little red tin labelled sniff tonic for hay fever and moral weakness. You sniff it. The world tilts slightly. Your sinuses clear. Your confidence returns. Your pulse rises. You're definitely ready for a garden party now. You are trying to behave. It's a sunny afternoon. The azaleas are blooming. The string quartet is playing something dignified and forgettable. Your corset is tight enough to reshape planets, and Lady Mudgeworth has cornered you near the lemonade table to explain, at length, her recent hysteria diagnosis and why she suspects her sofa is possessed. You smile, you nod, you die inside. You need something, a breather, a resurrection, a full chemical exorcism. So you excuse yourself politely, fake a cough for dramatic flair, and retreat behind a topiary shaped like a nervous goose. From your handbag you pull your salvation, a cocaine cigarette, marketed for hay fever, fatigue, asthma, and existential dread. The label promises immediate relief and moral uplift. You have no idea what that means. You strike a match anyway. You take one puff. Your sinuses open like French windows. Your lungs tingle. Your soul exits the body, does a cartwheel, and re-enters with a fresh pair of gloves and a positive attitude. By puff number 2, you've forgiven your mother, solved the wallpaper bubble in your drawing room, and composed a short opera titled The Duchess and the Fern. Puff 3, you are reborn. Victorians loved their cocaine cigarettes, and honestly, who could blame them? They were elegant, legal, and wildly unhinged. Pharmacists sold them by the tin under names like cocaine lozenges for the nose, catarrh cleansing cigarettes, mentholated moral clarity sticks, probably. Brands like Allen and Hanbury's promised relief from hay fever, migraines, shyness. The horrifying realization that your fiancé collects beetles. They were endorsed by doctors, singers, and that one aunt who always wore gloves indoors. It was considered perfectly normal to stand in your parlour and inhale pharmaceutical-grade confidence with a cup of tea and a side of light psychosis. And they weren't some fringe item. No. These were sold at every decent chemist next to the licorice root and the pills that made you briefly French. Medical ads in Victorian newspapers raved, soothed my nerves, cleared my throat, and reminded me why I married Reginald. Recommended by 6 out of 5 barbers. Cured my asthma and made me believe in dreams again. Each cigarette delivered a clean hit of refined pharmaceutical cocaine, sometimes mixed with opium, menthol, or just pure Victorian audacity. There were no health warnings, just graceful illustrations of women inhaling enlightenment like they were about to levitate gently out of their corsets. Back behind the hedge, you're now experiencing total nasal clearance, mild euphoria, a sudden desire to rearrange the cutlery by emotional tone. You toss your cigarette into a rose bush, exhale pure enlightenment, and step out onto the lawn like you've just won Best in Show. Lady Mudgeworth approaches. You're ready. You unleash a 7-minute monologue on the psychological implications of bone-handled spoons. By the time you're done, 3 people are applauding, and 1 man has dropped to one knee. And just as you take a theatrical bow, your chemist appears. He's holding a small box. You open it. Inside, A polished syringe and a label that reads, "For fatigue, melancholy, and light fencing." You raise an eyebrow. He nods solemnly. "Shall we?" he says. "Oh, darling, we shall. You're not usually one for needles. You prefer your medications in polite forms, tablets, lozenges, mysterious fizzing liquids that promise to restore your female enthusiasm. But today is different. Today you're exhausted, emotionally, physically, spiritually. You've just returned from a 5-hour conversation with your cousin Edith about her curtains, and you are 87% sure you briefly died. So when your chemist appears in the drawing room holding a velvet box and says, 'Would you care for a restorative injection?' you don't even ask what's in it. You just nod, roll up your sleeve and say, 'Do make it symmetrical.' He opens the box. Inside, a sleek, shiny Victorian syringe and a small glass vial labelled "Liquid Concentrated Cocaine for Revival, Efficiency, and Heavy Conversations with Furniture." He taps the syringe like he's done this before. You ask if he's a doctor. He squints. "I was once mistaken for one at a train station." Close enough. He injects your arm. What happens next is hard to describe, but the phrase "angelic lightning bolt to the soul" feels spiritually accurate. Your spine straightens. Your eyes widen. Your sense of purpose returns, throws on a top hat, and begins organizing your internal filing system. You are magnificent. You are powerful. You are very likely vibrating. Cocaine injections were a real and very popular part of late Victorian medicine. Once doctors realized they could dissolve cocaine into water and stab it into people, they lost all self-control. Suddenly everything became an injection candidate. Fatigue, indigestion, anxiety, existential crises, particularly long train rides. Victorian physicians believed that injecting cocaine directly into the bloodstream would provide instant clarity, relieve pain, increase productivity, elevate mood, and occasionally make you levitate during prayer. They were right about most of that, except the levitating, probably. In the 1880s and 1890s, you could walk into a chemist and purchase a cocaine injection kit. No prescription needed. Just walk in, slap down a coin, and walk out with everything you needed to become the most productive and slightly terrifying version of yourself. It was marketed for morphine withdrawal. Yes, they cured drug addiction with stronger drugs. Alcoholism, nervous exhaustion, and melancholia of the industrious woman. You could buy cocaine ampules, preloaded syringes, and even monthly kits for home use. Some women kept them in their dressing tables next to the eyebrow pencils and fainting salts. You know, just in case the urge to reorganize the pantry very suddenly arose. One newspaper ad from 1892 read, "For the weary gentleman, the overtaxed mother, or the overcooked clerk, inject and carry on." Doctors recommended moderate use, which meant only injecting yourself when tired, sad, bored, pensive, angry, gassy, socially anxious, or slightly out of breath. Back in your parlour, you've just injected yourself with enough pharmaceutical optimism to rewire a telegraph line. You've rewritten your will in iambic pentameter, composed a love letter to Queen Victoria's ankles, and mended 3 family rifts via aggressive cross-stitch. You're unstoppable, radiant, possibly immortal. But then, as you strike a dramatic pose by the fireplace, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, and you gasp. Not at your eyes, they're luminous. Not at your complexion, it's shimmering with ambition. It's your hair. Flat, listless, spiritually defeated. Your curls are slouching like they've seen too much. Your part has begun to drift westward in protest. Your grandeur demands better. You reach for your powder, but no, powder is for amateurs. You need science. You need something potent. You need, there it is, on the vanity, a cobalt bottle labelled Dr. Hargrove's Capillary Tonic for Weak-Willed Follicles, with cocaine. You unscrew the lid. It smells like peppermint, misguided hope, and a mild chemical warning. You grin. Tonight you shall rise again, but this time with volume. You're standing in your dressing gown like a general preparing for battle. Your hair is Disappointing, not bald exactly, just emotionally distant. It lays against your skull like it's been burdened by too many secrets. One side has curled itself into the shape of resignation. The other is visibly trying to resign. This will not do. You uncork the blue glass bottle from the vanity. Dr. Hargrove's Capillary Tonic for Weak-Willed Follicles, with cocaine, camphor and the power of hope. It smells like peppermint death and bad decisions made with excellent posture. You tilt your head forward, you pour. It hits your scalp like a sermon shouted by an opera singer inside a copper bell. You are instantly, profoundly awake. Your follicles buzz like a disturbed beehive. Your eyebrows attempt to retreat. Your sideburns file a formal complaint. Within 30 seconds you feel it. Vigorous tingling. Powerful tingling. Unregulated by any agency tingling. You begin pacing, you begin planning. You begin growing personality traits you didn't have 10 minutes ago. This is no longer just a hairstyle, this is your rebirth. Victorian hair care was a beautiful, unregulated storm of lies, herbs and narcotics. Cocaine found its way into all kinds of scalp tonics and hair restorers, usually packaged in apothecary bottles with names like Professor Etheridge's Scalp Elixir, Dr. Fenwick's Invigorator of the Follicular Realms, and Miss Penelope's Vibrational Pomade for Ladies and High-Strung Governors. These products promise to restore thinning hair, cure dandruff, stimulate circulation, prevent your soul from escaping through your scalp, allegedly. The active ingredients often included are cocaine, camphor, borax, ammonia, and something listed only as invigoration juice. Advertisements proudly claimed that after just 3 applications, customers experienced a warmth on the head, followed by ideas. A popular 1890s pamphlet stated, "The gentleman's scalp must be alive, responsive, electrified, and willing to participate in society." Some tonics advised rubbing the solution into your hair vigorously for 5 minutes every morning. Others suggested overnight treatments, during which your head would emit a pleasant buzzing sound as evidence of its transformation. Did it work? Absolutely not, but it felt like it did, which was all that mattered. You didn't grow more hair, you grew confidence, volume, and the belief that you could win an argument with a chandelier. Back in your bedroom, your scalp is now so stimulated it's practically vibrating in Morse code. You run a brush through your hair and leave behind sparks. Your curls are upright, alert, slightly militarized. You look in the mirror and whisper, "You are the storm," to no one in particular. You open the window and declare to the street, "I am voluminous and I will be respected." The neighbours clap, and just as you turn to celebrate with a small victory waltz, your chemist walks in holding a package. "For your nerves," he says casually. Inside, a pink glass bottle labelled Madame Lavona's Elixir for Emotional Delicacy, with cocaine and very good intentions. You nod. Time to relax. Time to fix your personality. You're trying to be soft today. That's what the etiquette book said. A lady must drift, not stomp. You attempt to drift. You fail immediately. You're stomping. You stomp to the tea tray. You stomp to the parlour. You stomp through an emotional flashback from 1867. Your nerves, to put it mildly, are not delicate. They are bristling, bellowing, possibly armed. So you do what any well-heeled Victorian woman would do. You fetch your nerve tonic. The bottle is pale pink with embossed lettering and a ribbon around the neck. It reads, Madame Lavona's Elixir for the Restoration of Feminine Composure. Fortified with cocaine, valerian, and absolute certainty. You take a ladylike sip. Then another, then one more because it tastes like roses dipped in danger, and then the lace curtain flutters, and suddenly it's too fluttery. And then your gloves feel like emotional betrayal, and then, within 90 seconds, you have opinions. So many opinions. You announce your new spiritual name, you lecture the mantel clock, you march upstairs and tell your bedroom it's not meeting your emotional needs. You're no longer delicate, you are a movement. Victorian nerve tonics were marketed to women as gentle restorative elixirs. They were neither. They were pharmaceutical hand grenades disguised as compassion. Women in the 19th century were routinely diagnosed with things like uterine melancholy, wandering womb syndrome, overgathered thoughts, and the ever-classic nerves. The cure? Bottled madness. Nerve tonics were sold under brand names like Dr. Stanhope's Liquid Grace, Gentlewoman's Resilience Syrup, Mrs. Flannery's Panic Preventer with coca leaf and just a pinch of something divine. The main ingredients: cocaine, alcohol, morphine, caffeine, and sometimes a gold leaf, because why not? These were given to women suffering from anxiety, mood swings, loud opinions, reading too much, not wanting to get married. One 1891 advertisement promised, Madame Lavona's tonic restores the soul, freshens the breath, and calms the wild femininity that leads to unapproved book clubs. Did they work? Well, yes, but not in the gentle calm sense. More in the she hasn't blinked in 6 hours, but she painted the entire library and solved algebra sense. Some women took just 1 teaspoon and immediately decided to start writing manifestos. Others took 2 and became emotionally married to their wallpaper. Side effects were rarely printed, but often observed. Back in your drawing room, your heart is whispering a monologue from Shakespeare and your eyebrows are trying to unionize. You have fixed your posture, organized your enemies, named your elbows, Gerald and Faith, and developed a completely new dialect based on size and meaningful glances. Your maid walks in, she asks if you're all right. You answer in German, you don't speak German. You excuse yourself politely and run headfirst into a houseplant. You need balance, you need to ground yourself. You need a bath. And wouldn't you know it? The chemist just dropped off a brand new soap. You read the label, Coca soap, for skin that feels touched by angels and also mildly on fire. You grab your towel. It's time to bathe like a goddess with absolutely no impulse control. You're covered in decisions. They cling to your skin like regret and linen. You've emotionally overcommitted to 3 dinner parties, 2 hobbies, and a passing seagull who stared at you too intensely. You need to wash the day off. You draw a bath. You pour in floral salts. You add rose oil. You light a candle that smells like inherited trauma. And then, the final touch, you reach for the newest addition to your ablutionary arsenal. Professor Wigham's Coca soap, for clarity, skin radiance, and unscheduled euphoria. It looks like a bar of soap. It smells like peppermint and prophecy. You lather. And suddenly, everything makes sense. Your pores open, your scalp applauds. A Victorian angel floats past your window and gives you a thumbs up. By the second rinse, your elbows have become sentient. Your knees remember a poem from childhood. The water glows faintly with ambition. You are clean. You are reborn. You are vibrating. In the late 19th century, cleanliness was next to godliness, and occasionally narcotics. Victorian toiletry shelves were stocked with cocaine-infused hygiene products, from scalp lotions, tooth powders, facial creams, and yes, soap. Manufacturers promoted Coca soap as a gentle skin cleanser that also invigorated the blood, stimulated the nerves, cleansed the spirit, and made you capable of organizing a charity gala with nothing but a loofah and pure intent. One 1887 advertisement read, "For the lady whose beauty is fatigued, Coca soap restores luster to the skin and conviction to the soul." Another from 1892 claimed, "Its froth carries away dead skin cells, spiritual impurities, and lingering uncertainty about your marriage prospects." Common ingredients included cocaine hydrochloride, lanolin, lavender oil, and an amount of menthol described as bracing to the faint-hearted. Soap was no longer just for washing. It was a moral tool, a beauty enhancer, and a gateway to temporary omniscience. Customers reported feelings of clarity, warmth, slight numbness, and a deep, inexplicable need to repaint their ceiling in symbolic patterns. Doctors had mixed opinions, but mostly because they were busy bathing in the stuff themselves. Back in your bath, you're now floating. Literally, you've achieved the perfect balance of buoyancy and self-worth. Your cheeks are glowing. Your skin feels like rose petals dipped in cocaine logic. You no longer require towels. You air dry through sheer force of will. You rise as you glide to the mirror, and there, on the washstand, sits a final gift from your chemist. Coca Cosmetic Cream, enough for radiance, wrinkle repulsion, and unholy levels of confidence. You smirk. You have exfoliated your past. Now it's time to moisturize your future. You apply the cream. You don't ask questions. You don't check the label. You simply scoop a generous dollop of cold, pink promise from the jar and smear it across your face like a Victorian goddess preparing for war. It tingles, then it buzzes, then it whispers. Your skin begins to hum. Your forehead achieves clarity. Your jawline begins issuing ultimatums to your neighbours. You're not merely hydrated, you're ascending. You add more, why not? Your face deserves this. Your pores have been through things. They've witnessed corsets, public disappointment, and last week's spoon-related emotional incident at tea. As you massage the cream into your cheeks, the sensation intensifies, icy and electric like you're kissing a glacier that sells stocks. Your temples pulse, your nose twitches, your eyebrows stand up and politely announce their retirement. You glance in the mirror and gasp, not because you look bad, because you look ready. Ready to confront your cousin, ready to rewrite etiquette, ready to become someone who never apologizes for blinking too loudly. You stare yourself down in the glass and whisper, "You are glowing, you are terrifying, and you are definitely going to file a strongly worded letter to Parliament about the emotional burden of table linens." Your reflection nods. It understands. Victorian cosmetic creams weren't just about beauty. They were about delirious ambition. Face creams, lotions, and night balms were often packed with cocaine, mercury, lead, and just a pinch of colonial overconfidence. They promised to remove blemishes, tighten skin, awaken the spirit, and erase emotions considered aesthetic liabilities. One real 1890s advertisement boasted, "Our coca cream invigorates the skin, restores youthful bloom, and calms the hysteria of an insufficiently admired woman." Another claimed, "Delightfully tingles upon application. One use and your jawline may become ambitious." These creams were marketed to women with melancholy countenance, women with marriage fatigue, women who had simply been outside too long and caught a case of sunlight. They were sold in elegant pots with swan-shaped lids and botanical etchings, as if the packaging might distract from the fact that you were smearing pure narcotics onto your skull. Physicians occasionally raised concerns about prolonged exposure, to which most customers replied, "But have you seen my skin?" and continued glowing into the void. Back at your vanity, you now resemble a well-lit threat. Your face glistens with purpose. Your lips have naturally plumped themselves out of fear. You smile at your reflection, and it winks back with visible menace. You descend the stairs like a woman who's about to file paperwork against a duke. At the bottom, your chemist awaits. He offers you a tray. On it, a single chocolate truffle. You arch an eyebrow. He nods. "It's medicated," he whispers, "for the nerves and for the sugar deficiency brought on by spiritual excellence." You bite in. "Oh no, that's not cocoa. That's coca. Sweet, euphoric, slightly alarming. You chew slowly. You're about to become a confectionery god. You deserve a treat. You've moisturized. You've conquered your own reflection. You've sent 3 telepathic messages to your enemies using only your eyebrows. You've earned this. So you pluck the dainty pink box off your silver tray and untie the satin ribbon with the reverence of someone diffusing an emotional bomb. The chocolates inside are delicate, little domes of sugar, elegance, and probable felony. You pop one into your mouth. It tastes like lavender, power, and secrets no one should know. You chew slowly. Your pupils dilate. Your spine reboots. You hear a faint but unmistakable whisper. You are unstoppable. By bonbon number 3, you've rearranged your furniture by aura and written a 5-act play about forks. By number 4, you can smell time. You're now 82% bonbon and 18% prophecy. Victorian society believed in cocaine for wellness, and nowhere was this more deliciously dangerous than in their sweets. Cocaine-laced chocolates were marketed for women suffering from melancholy of spirit, students facing mental overexertion, and literally anyone with a mouth and access to disposable income. These were not niche treats, these were department store staples. They came in flavours like rose, vanilla, mint, and unrelenting ambition. Ad copy from the 1890s promised, stimulates the intellect while delighting the palate, for the busy lady, the fretful poet, or the underwhelmed governess. Some boxes even included dosage instructions. 1 bonbon for cheer, 2 for vigour, 3 for productivity, 4, not recommended during legal proceedings. Manufacturers claimed the chocolates invigorated both mind and complexion, which is rich considering they were essentially edible brass knuckles for your nervous system. Doctors debated whether they were appropriate for children, which was a polite way of asking, how small is too small to hallucinate a Christmas goose reciting Shakespeare? Back in your parlour, you've now finished the box. You're hosting a tea party for 12, even though no one was invited. You're balancing a full silver tray on one hand and reciting your own horoscope aloud in iambic pentameter. The guests, your coat rack, your maid, and a confused neighbour you dragged in from the garden, are listening intently. Someone claps, you bow, and just as you begin passing out cucumber sandwiches cut into the shape of your own initials, your chemist leans in through the window. He holds up a tiny blue bottle labelled Doctor, Fogsworth's anti-cramp elixir for ladies, with cocaine, camphor, and highly suggestive claims. He raises an eyebrow. You nod once. Time to talk about cramps. The cramp hits like betrayal. Not a soft ache, not a whisper. No, this is a full-body declaration of war. It arrives with the elegance of a drunk goose and the emotional subtlety of a thrown candlestick. You freeze mid-step. 1 hand on your abdomen, 1 hand gripping the nearest furniture. You gasp as though someone just insulted your bonnet in public. Your uterus is throwing furniture. Your ovaries are unionizing. You can feel your corset judging you. You hobble toward the vanity like a woman on a mission and minor internal revolt. You fling open the drawer, knocking over 3 jars of eyebrow cream and a commemorative brooch you haven't emotionally unpacked. There it is. Dr. Fogsworth's monthly lady elixir for the inner turmoil of a well-dressed woman, fortified with cocaine, camphor, laudanum, and determination. You unscrew the cap with shaking hands. The smell hits you first. Eucalyptus, danger, and the faint memory of an inappropriate poem you once received in boarding school. You chug it, because you are done playing games. Within seconds your internal organs are floating. Your spine straightens. Your pupils dilate so hard you can hear the carpet's secrets. You are cramp-free. You are pain-free. You are technically unmoored from linear time. You take a second swig, because one should never face menstruation, polite society, and a disappointing tea tray while sober. Your uterus now sends you a thank you note. You curtsy to no one in particular. It's going to be a productive day. Victorian lady tonics were a pharmaceutical genre unto themselves, sold as cures for monthly unrest, womb-related disobedience, excessive pondering during menses, and the ever-persistent diagnosis of being female in a complex society. These tonics were laced with cocaine, camphor, alcohol, laudanum, and occasionally instructions like do not operate machinery while ascending spiritually. They promised to ease cramps, stabilize mood, restore composure to wandering ovaries, and reintegrate the soul back into the body. Results may vary. Advertisements in women's magazines featured endorsements like, "After just 1 spoonful, I forgot I had a uterus and began playing the pianoforte with both hands and no regrets." Or, "My wife used to cry at doilies. Now she repaints the shed in under an hour. Some tonics even came with gold-trimmed measuring spoons, because if you're going to hallucinate respectability, you should do it with elegance. Back in the parlour, you are cramp-free and on your 4th hour of lecturing your armchair about the feminist implications of lace trim. You have rewritten your diary as a political pamphlet, created a pie chart tracking your mood swings and their victims, and resolved firmly to abolish Tuesdays. You're wearing 3 shawls, none of which belong to you. Your hair is perfect. Your shoes are emotionally supportive. The maid peeks in. She holds up a delicate green tin. You read the label, children's soothing syrup for teething, fussing and excessive opinions, cocaine enhanced, trusted by governesses, wolves and God. You raise an eyebrow. She nods solemnly. You tilt your head. Just a taste, you whisper, for science. The child is screaming, not politely, not whimsically. No adorable little sobs into a handkerchief embroidered with sheep. This is operatic rage in the key of possessed barn owl. He's teething. He's thrashing. He's throwing scones with the precision of a trained artillery officer. You've tried everything. Rattles, warm milk, bribery, exorcism. Nothing works. Until you remember the tin. You fish it from the nursery drawer. It's green and gold with delicate scrollwork and an illustration of a cherub that looks slightly sedated. The label reads, Mrs. Flindle's Soothing Syrup, for teething, temper and tiny tempests, contains cocaine, morphine, alcohol and quiet. You measure a spoonful, then reconsider. You double it. You pour it gently into his shrieking mouth like a sacrament. He blinks. He hiccups. He sighs. And then, silence. He stares at you like he's just solved gravity and might write a thesis about it. You pick him up. He waves once regally and then falls asleep mid-blink. You're not sure if he's cured, dreaming, or temporarily in another dimension. But you are sure of one thing. You have discovered peace. Victorian parenting was less about gentle bedtime routines and more about chemical diplomacy. Soothing syrups, calming powders, and infant pacifiers were routinely laced with cocaine, morphine, alcohol, chloroform, and the general attitude of they'll be fine probably. These were sold over the counter, no prescription, no warning label, no hint that your child was about to astrally project through the wallpaper. Popular brands included Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup, Jane's Carminative Balsam, Godfrey's Cordial, Dalby's Elixir, Quiet Baby, now with triple morphine power. They were marketed for teething, colic, fussiness, loudness of spirit, and general baby unpleasantness. One real advertisement boasted, "A quiet child is a blessing. A child who stays quiet for 12 hours is our product in action." Mothers swore by it, physicians warned against it. And babies? Well, they either napped peacefully or stared into space like they'd just seen the ghost of Queen Victoria playing whist with a walrus. By the early 1900s, deaths and scandals began to pile up, shocking everyone except literally any person paying attention, and regulations finally crept in. But for decades, a spoonful of syrup could solve everything, including your child's desire to perceive reality. Back in the nursery, your angel sleeps, face serene, mouth slightly open, a gentle snore that sounds faintly like diplomacy. You sigh, and just as you sit down to rest your weary, judgment-clouded mind, your chemist knocks on the door holding a brown bottle wrapped in ribbon. You read the tag, Mr. Crumb's Medicinal Cocoa, a hot beverage for the entire family, fortified with cocaine and the spirit of adventure. You smile, because really, what better way to relax than with cocaine hot chocolate? The cocoa hits like a letter bomb from God. One sip and your blood is holding a staff meeting. Your eyelashes straighten with ambition. Your heartbeat files for overtime. You're warm, wide-eyed, and wildly overqualified for every conversation you've ever had. You stand up slowly, then faster, then again just to make sure gravity knows who's in charge. You're no longer a person drinking cocoa. You are the cocoa. You are the mug. you're the entire beverage experience. Ideas pour into your head like they're trying to beat a deadline. You reorganize your furniture using only your aura. You finally understand calculus. You write a 47-page apology letter to your third-grade art teacher and then withdraw it because you've just remembered you were right all along. You're incandescent. You're unstoppable. You are mildly concerned about how hard your ankles are vibrating. You check the time. It's 2:03 a.m. You don't blink. You don't breathe. You alphabetize your neighbours. You're finally relaxed. Medicinal cocoa in the Victorian era was considered the healthier alternative to tea or coffee, which is wild because it often contained cocaine, caffeine, spices that once started naval wars, and just enough sugar to make your heart file for hazard pay. Fortified cocoa was marketed for nervous exhaustion, physical fatigue, mental fog, and spiritual underachievement. It came in powdered or liquid form and could be served hot or cold depending on how badly you wanted to hallucinate before breakfast. One 1889 advertisement claimed, "For ladies who require focus and fortitude, and for gentlemen with fragile blood and business ambitions." It promised restful alertness, gentle invigoration, and increased capacity for civilized outrage. Doctors said it was an excellent stimulant for the overstimulated. Children were given half doses, elders were given 2. People who protested the contents were told they were simply not embracing their inner vigour. Reports from users varied. I organised my sewing kit by emotion. I argued with my mantel clock and I won. I haven't blinked since Tuesday and I feel terrific. Back in your parlour, your cocoa cup is empty, you've repolished the silverware, invented a better alphabet, and ghost wrote your husband's memoirs, all while pacing in circles and muttering things like, "Justice is a saucer, and I am the tea." You check the clock, it's 2:47 a.m, you're not sleepy, you're brilliant, you're possibly glowing. Just then a small package slides through the mail slot. You pick it up and read the tag. F. Grimble's Invincible Hay Fever Snuff. Breathe easy, think hard, cough in Latin, cocaine enhanced. You smile. There's always room for a little nose powder before sunrise. You're in the garden, communing with a fern. It understands you. You've just blown your nose so hard that time paused for a moment, apologised, and kept going. The world is vibrant. The air is electric. The leaves are gossiping, and frankly you agree with them. You have taken your hay fever medicine, which is to say, you have snorted Victorian enlightenment. Every flower is too beautiful. Every breeze is a revelation. Every sneeze feels like a minor religious awakening. Your eyes are watering, but in a philosophical way. You're not crying, you're simply moved by the emotional complexity of grass. You crouch beside a daffodil and whisper, "I know." You don't know what you know, but the daffodil nods solemnly. At one point you try to write a letter to Queen Victoria in the dirt using a stick. You don't finish it because you become deeply distracted by the smell of sunlight and the suspicious behaviour of a nearby goose. You are clear. You are free. You are so alarmingly alert that the trees seem to flinch when you blink. Someone sneezes in the distance and you whip around, fully prepared to offer them medical advice, a handkerchief, and a brief interpretive dance about nasal liberation. You are outside. You are medicated. You are dangerous. In the Victorian era, hay fever wasn't considered a seasonal nuisance. It was a moral failing of the sinuses. Victorians treated it with cocaine-based nasal powders, often sold as snuffs, inhalable tonics, or just for the restoration of nasal vigour. Common brand names included Grimble's Snuff for Gentle Persons, Dr. Marlowe's Nasal Fortifier, Perry Davis's Nose Dust, patent pending. These products were marketed as treatments for hay fever, catarrh, summer nose distress, and emotional sniffing. They came in tins, bottles, or single-use packets, and were often accompanied by ads like this one from the Boston Globe, 1889. A single pinch relieves all obstruction of breath, clears the mind, and restores civility to the sneezing gentleman. One real ad for Dr. Gray's nasal cure claimed, "Favoured by choirs, chemists and men of finance, a nasal revelation." The Cincinnati Enquirer, in a review of health tonics, 1891, even joked, "If one cannot breathe clearly after Dr. Thornton's coca snuff, then perhaps one should consider breathing as optional." Of course, many of these contain not just cocaine, but also camphor, menthol, ground-up herbs, a palpable lack of regulatory oversight. People swore by them. Some claimed the powders helped with memory, focus and ambition, while others used them to clear spiritual congestion before church or tea with difficult aunts. Side effects included hallucinations, nosebleeds, profound confidence in one's opinions about doilies. Back in your foyer, your sinuses are now whistling the national anthem. You've ironed 6 handkerchiefs with your stare. You've predicted tomorrow's rainfall. You've begun offering nasal readings to guests like a fortune teller for the emotionally constipated. The room smells like lavender and dust and potential. You reach for another sniff. Just a light top-off, you tell yourself, and then you spot it on the tray. A pale purple bottle with a silver cap. The label reads, Madame Belvoir's facial toner and complexion corrector. For tired skin, thin confidence, and beauty beyond your station. With cocaine. You blink slowly. Time to do your skincare. With enthusiasm and consequences, you're already speaking. You don't know when it started. You don't know to whom. But you are mid-monologue, standing atop an overturned tea crate in the park, addressing a bewildered crowd of 12 bystanders and one very judgmental pigeon. Your voice is crisp, your spine is steel, your eyebrows are conducting their own separate lecture. You feel unstoppable. The public speaking tonic has fully kicked in. Your left hand is gesturing with such power it nearly starts a small windstorm. Your right hand clutches your parasol like a gavel. You are righteous. You are flawless. You are concerned about voting rights, hat sizing, and the correct angle of doilies. You make eye contact with the vicar. He nods. He's taking notes. You do not remember taking the elixir. You just recall reading the label, Lady Harmon's Elocution Enhancer, for stage fright, hesitation, and the unfortunate habit of listening when others speak. Contains cocaine and a dash of consequence. You must have drunk the whole bottle. You have not stopped talking for 38 minutes. Victorians faced enormous pressure to speak properly in public, and the solution, naturally, was pharmaceutical confidence in a bottle. These tonics were sold under names like Professor Atwill's Public Composure Solution, Dr. Beasley's Tincture of Eloquence, Miss Greta's Pre-Toast Courage Drops with cocaine and social clarity. They were advertised to orators, debutantes, actors, preachers, and anyone who suffered from unsteady tone, verbal meekness, or the soul-crushing. Weight of eye contact. A typical formula included cocaine, brandy, peppermint oil, possibly fireworks based on the effect. These tonics were often used before speeches, marriage proposals, dinner toasts, loud opinions at garden parties. One real-life testimonial published in the Cheltenham Journal 1893 stated, "Having taken the elocution enhancer, I addressed the town council, my mother-in-law, and 2 swans. None interrupted me. I felt seen. Stage actors were notorious users. So were clergymen, lawyers, and some governesses with unusually compelling bedtime story delivery. Most users reported total obliteration of fear, a tendency to dramatically pause for effect, and speeches that started with good evening and ended somewhere around give me Scotland or give me death. Back in the park, you are now quoting Cicero, Shakespeare, and your Aunt Hester's pie recipe as if they are equal parts of a sacred doctrine. The crowd is spellbound. A child offers you a flower. A dog bows. You have transcended fear. You are the voice of reason. You are the echo in the cathedral. You are giving a TED talk to a duck. But then, a new tonic is pressed into your hand. This one is labelled a Madame Rivington's Appetite Corrector, for the woman who desires less bread and more control. Cocaine-rich, unapologetically slim. You raise an eyebrow. You haven't eaten in 6 hours. You also haven't blinked in 6 hours, but one more bottle couldn't hurt. For confidence, for discipline, for the pursuit of tight waistlines and chaos, you are slicing a radish with resentment. Not because you dislike radishes, you just resent the entire concept of food now. You've taken Madame Rivington's appetite corrector, and you no longer experience hunger, fatigue, or mercy. You've stopped eating, but started doing everything else. Rapidly, obsessively, flawlessly. You've scrubbed the floorboards with a toothbrush. You've polished the doorknobs until they begged for release. You've written control in capital letters on your mirror using eyebrow pencil and righteous indignation. You feel light. You feel clear. You feel like you could win an arm wrestling contest using only spite. A maid offers you a crumpet. You stare at it as if it insulted your lineage. You whisper, "Temptation is the enemy of excellence," and return to alphabetizing your teacups by temperature attention. Victorian women were constantly pressured to stay thin, pale, and just fragile enough to be decorative, but not inconvenient. So naturally, cocaine became a diet aid, sold under labels like Madame Rivington's Appetite Regulator, Slim Aid Elixir, Dr. Beecham's Feminine Figure Powder with coca leaf and moral support. These tonics claim to suppress cravings, cure fleshiness of the spirit, elevate the will above cake. Cocaine, with its natural stimulant effects, did reduce appetite along with sanity, sleep, and your ability to blink without strategizing. One real 1894 advertisement stated, "Take 1 dose before meals, and soon you shall want nothing at all. Not bread, not meat, not conversation." These remedies were wildly popular with actresses, society wives, and women who simply didn't want to be accused of enjoying lunch. Side effects included hyperactivity, mood swings, exceptional hat-straightening speed, the sudden urge to rearrange everything except your emotions. Back in your sitting room, you're now fasting and furious. You've woven an entire blanket from old dress hems. You've started a diary for your houseplants. You've composed an angry letter to the notion of gravy. Your chemist knocks. Nervous, sweaty, trembling. You answer mid-curtsy. He hands you a bottle. It reads, "Doctor, Swan's Bedtime Elixir for the Chronically Awake, gently laced with cocaine, laudanum, and lullabies." You nod. It's time to sleep. Or is it? You're not sure when your legs stopped being legs. They might still be attached, but emotionally they've filed for early retirement. Your elbows feel like pudding with ambitions. Your hair is floating 2 inches above your scalp and softly whispering state secrets. This is fine. You've taken the elixir, the bedtime elixir, the one with the soft floral label and the strong legal implications, the one that promised to soothe your nerves, quiet your thoughts, and tuck you into sleep with firm Victorian authority. And now you're the ghost of your own bedtime routine. You lie on the mattress like a Victorian fainting couch come to life. You're draped across the bed in a position that suggests either profound peace or complete neurological shutdown. You're melting. You blink once every 7 minutes. Your thoughts drift in slow motion like emotionally wounded swans. You briefly wonder if you're dreaming or just extremely horizontal. You hear a clock tick in the next room and begin weeping because it's so brave. You're wrapped in 5 quilts, a moral dilemma, and a soft hum that might be the wallpaper reciting lullabies. Your eyelids give up. Your breathing slows. You fall into a sleep so deep that time briefly forgets about you. This is no nap. This is Victorian sleep, and if someone wakes you up early, you will sue them, using your dream lawyer. Victorian sleep aids weren't mild. They were pharmaceutical power naps in a bottle. These tonics were less about lulling you gently to sleep, and more about bludgeoning your nervous system into unconsciousness with a medley of cocaine, laudanum, opium tincture, chloral hydrate, alcohol, and a whisper of "please don't read the ingredient list too closely," sold under romantic names like the Night Lady's Restorative, Dr. Swan's Bedtime Cordial, Madame Forsyth's Midnight Mercy with anise and forgetting powder. These products were used for insomnia, hysteria, excessive ruminating, and women who read past dusk and therefore became alert in the worst ways. One article from the Illustrated Police News, June 1892, recounted a case where a woman, long afflicted with nervous wakefulness, was found resting most peacefully at last after consuming a double dose of a sleep tonic sold near Piccadilly, described only as a cordial of curious aroma and disturbing silence. Meanwhile, the British Medical Journal cautioned in 1889, though some tinctures achieve the appearance of slumber, they may quiet more than restlessness and must not be mistaken for safety. Despite warnings, these tonics remained hugely popular, especially among women with money, anxiety, or simply too many emotional responsibilities before breakfast. Side effects included deep unconsciousness, vivid dreams of complete life reboots, and occasionally forgetting you had an entire second child. And so concludes our delightful descent into the lace-trimmed lunacy of Victorian pharmaceuticals, an era where every ailment could be treated with a brisk walk, a decorative hat, or an unmeasured quantity of cocaine. They snorted it, smoked it, rubbed it on their gums, brushed it into their hair, fed it to their children, massaged it into their emotions, and called it wellness. If history teaches us anything, it's that no one who drinks cocaine-infused cocoa before bed should be left unsupervised with a mirror, a megaphone, or access to a printing press. But at least they slept beautifully, eventually, face down in a fainting chair, glowing with confidence and gently vibrating. Sleep-tight, powdered pioneers, you were deeply, profoundly unwell, and we admire you for it. And now, as the last powder is brushed from the vanity, and the drawing room settles beneath moonlight and mildly twitching curtains, I hope this strange walk through Victorian cocaine lingers, like the sting of tonic on the tongue, or the echo of a monologue delivered to a completely silent fern. You've braved beauty creams, bonbons, nasal snuffs, and elixirs so energizing they made teacups nervous. But now it's time to rest. The bottle is empty, the eyebrows have relaxed, and for tonight, the nerves are still. If you're still awake, congratulations, you've survived another evening inside history's most fashionably overstimulated era. Hit subscribe so we can unbox another strange corner of the past tomorrow night. And as you drift, the soft crackle of the fire will carry you deeper, far from powdered morals and caffeinated skincare, and into sleep.